So much for keeping it here on Morning at NTV. Stephen Mbidde on Fefeso Chibugam coming to you from Buziga. We are the home of Honorable Engineer Simon Giw D'Ujanga. He's a former Minister of State for Energy in Uganda. We know Uganda, we are now in 117 years of electricity in Uganda, but we've seen different companies come and go. We had the Uganda Electricity Board that was dissolved after government took over this. Of course, it was under government, but then government entered into a PPP and then brought in Umeme 20 years ago that we saw transferring its responsibility to Uganda Electricity Distribution Company Limited. Honorable D'Ujanga here at one time was part of the staff of UEB, Uganda Electricity Board. He knows much more about this energy sector, which also led him to be the Minister of State for Energy. Good morning to you, Honorable, and thank you for welcoming us into your home.
Good morning. You're most welcome.
Thank you. You have been part of this power sector in Uganda. Yesterday we saw a landmark event that took place. But first of all, take us through how you are part of UEB. How did UEB come to be dissolved?
Okay, that was in the late 90s when government decided to attract private capital, private players into the electricity sector. And since then, by that time, UEB was what we called vertically integrated. That is, they were doing generation, they were doing transmission, we were also doing distribution. And it was not possible for a private investor to come and invest in all of those parts of electricity. So government decided that they should separate they should separate transmission from generation from distribution. So we had to make a company for generation, a company for transmission, a separate company for distribution. So that any investor, a private investor who wanted to invest, could invest in any of those companies when they are disbandled. And as a result, of course, since now we are going to have many players, private players into the sector, we created Uganda Electricity Regulation Authority, a regulator for the sector. You know, if there are many players in a sector, they could have bickering, they could have complaints here. They need somebody to referee them. So that is how Electricity Regulatory Authority came about. And now, since then, by the turn of the decade, that's around by 2000, these companies were in place. Yeah.
You know, someone who has been part of this energy sector, 117 years of having electricity in Uganda, but we're still now just talking about Umeme having been able to give only 2.2 million people electricity supply. Do you think the coming of Umeme into the play has really contributed much to this subsector called electricity distribution in Uganda? Do you think that the government really made a wise decision to dissolve Umeme and then bring on board all these entities, UEDCL, UEDCL, and then Umeme?
I think, yeah. Now, Umeme's contribution to the sector should not be underestimated, because by the time they came, we had losses of up to 30%. This is commercial loss, which is really unpaid bills, and technical losses, which were due to leakages on the lines and so on, breakages and so on. So Umeme brought private capital. They brought private capital into the sector. By the time we were bringing in Umeme, nobody could invest in the UEB because it was sort of dilapidated due to lack of investment for a long time. So Umeme brought in private capital into the subsector, and now I think as we speak, the distribution company, the distribution entity of the subsector is commercially viable. I think they are trading on the market and people are buying shares, but by that time, nobody would have wanted to. So they played a role. They played a role.
But you know, yes, he could have played a role, but in 20 years, we are just counting on a 2.2 million people.
Yeah.
This is quite a small number, considering that we are over 45 million people, and also looking at the time, 20 years, just 2.2 million people, and even then, even with so many complaints, you feel that it was really overdue that women had to exit the market.
Well, they had a concession for 20 years, which expires this year now, this month, last month. Today is March, 1st of April. They had a concession, but they've improved the sector because the coverage, the electricity coverage was worse than this at the time. The rural was 1% electrified. But now, when I left the ministry, the rural had increased to 15% due to some action we took, the rural electrification. Because with that unbundling, government also created the Rural Electrification Agency, which was to focus specifically on the rural area. And by the time I left the ministry, we had gone a long way to supply electricity in the rural area. Well, I agree with you, we could do more, but we can only do so much. I agree with you, we could cover the whole country, but the coverage is much more now than it was.
You know, Honorable Simon D'Ujanga, it's now 20 years later, Uganda hasn't even compensated, hasn't even paid off this former staff of Uganda Electricity Board, UEB, and now we are even going back to UEDCL. This is, we could even say that you also could also be part of the people, you having been Minister of State for Energy, but also a former staff of UEB. These people thought maybe you coming in would even lobby for them, but up to now, many are still waiting for their allowances and their compensation.
Well, what happened in that case, because I was in the middle of it, when they were unbundling UEB, then they said all the staff of UEB should go home, and they paid us to go home. Until later, the staff, where the union system, the staff through their representatives said, hang on a minute, being advised by some lawyers. They said, hang on a minute, these people should be on pension. You don't terminate people like that. When you have terminated somebody that way, you should put them on pension, and pension does not expire if you're still alive. Therefore, it was illegal to pay these people to go home. And of course, the High Court ruled in our favor. And it is true, we have been paid some lump sum. Personally, we got some lump sum. And now we are on pension. We are now on pension through the public service system. Some few staff are still
in court.
Yes, still, as you know, court things. They are still in court. Even us, some of us who were paid in installment, we're still demanding some money. But that has not stopped the sector from moving on. Yeah.
Let's talk about UEDCL coming to play now, effective 1st April, which is today.
Yeah.
Do you think government taking back its responsibility of power distribution will this time around be a profitable venture? Will they really do the task as expected? Because we even move around Kampala, even today, when UEDCL was in charge, I left Kampala Central, I left, this is Machinde, but many houses don't even have power on the first day. What a mess that we are going into.
I think,
isn't it?
I don't know if you listened to the minister yesterday, the minister, Honorable Nakabirwa. She said there will be some blood, some little blood, when we are changing over from this hand to this one. But really, on a serious note, where Umeme has left, if the figures are correct, that is, losses are down, collection. You remember we used to make bill and then collect the money at the end of the month.
Yes.
And therefore, there were defaulters.
That also came in with a cost.
Yes, there were defaulters. Some people wouldn't pay. Government barracks would not pay. Hospitals would not pay. Even if government gave the permanent secretaries money, they were not paying the bills. But this prepayment meter, which has been brought, has made Umeme collecting 100 and something %, which means they're borrowing. If I pay in advance, it means you're going to use my money even before I consume. Now, if Umeme now goes, and then they left the distribution entity at a certain level, there is now no unpaid bills. There is now over 100% correction. I have not tested the new system. I understand they put another system on the phone for buying electricity. There should be no problem if they don't take their eyes off the ball, because now they are going from somewhere. They are going from somewhere. When Umeme came here, this entity was very risky. That's why their rate of return was very high. They put it very high, and government had no choice but to accept a very high rate of return. That's why we are complaining that Umeme is expensive. But by that time, the private businessmen, they couldn't risk their money. They couldn't risk their money in a venture which they thought was risky, so they had to capitalize the risks. And I'm sure if we wanted Umeme to stay and ask them to make their rate of return less than 10%, maybe we would have negotiated with them.
You know, Honorable Simon D'Ujanga, we are speaking at a time when government is even looking at cutting down the costs. In fact, even came up with these RAPEX, rationalization of government agencies. Now it has the responsibility of even investing more. You know, when you talk to Umeme staff or Umeme officials, they will tell you how heavily they've been investing, and government is looking at just spending less. Will this venture they are going to really see government willing to invest more into this energy sector at a time like this, when it wants to cut down the costs? Yeah,
but the worst is over. I don't know if you remember the period of load shedding. There was a period of load shedding here when we had to get in Agreco. You remember?
Yeah.
Agreco. The power was so expensive then. But when now the sector has been stabilized, so we have now the power, although still expensive, because the president has always said bring it to 5 cents for industries, but still high. But the worst is over, because now we have enough generation capacity. You will not load shed again. We still have Bujagali, which is expensive, but Bujagali also came when the sector was risky. Bujagali came when the sector was risky, so somebody said, I'm putting my money in there, and it's so risky. So I need so much rate of return. But now they're getting much more than they should have got if it was actual business. And there has been an attempt to renegotiate that as well.
Granted, but I'm looking at the willingness of government at a time when it wants to spend less and it has to spend more. For example, there are so many industries coming up. There's a lot of demand from even residential houses. Is government willing to inject in more money like Umeme has been trying to do? This is something that looks at the opposite. Yeah,
or government should not run away from its responsibility. That was our UEB policy, that expand this network into the rural. Each year we had a certain percentage. That is, this year we should go by so much percent. This year should go by so much percent. But the government capital was not enough that time. That's why Umeme was brought as a private player. And they've done their part. Now, this UEDCL, yesterday I was watching NTV Live. I heard they've been given already $74 million to start with. The CEO there said, we think by the end of this time we would have connected so many people. Now, if it is proper planning, if there is proper planning, and being interested in the sector like the government has been, His Excellency the President has been so much, in fact, interested in the sector. If we continue that way, there is no reason why they shouldn't continue expanding. The Rural Electrification Agency has been moved to the ministry for closer supervision. They should also still continue to extend the electricity supply to the rural.
Well, let's also look at the return to investment. One of the reasons, as we are beginning, you told me Umeme had to be dissolved because government was injecting money and it was making losses. And now we know that there is that part of course, the era was Rural Electrification Agency was merged, but also the efforts are there to push and extend electricity into the villages. But when you look at it critically, the amount of money you invest in taking the poles, making the electricity reach the houses, how much money are you recouping back to the economy after a single household is spending less than 20,000 on power a month? Is there really return to investment?
That is a very important question. That is a very important question. Now, in this sector is different from other businesses. We have certain areas which are not, don't make business sense, if you know what I mean. There's some rural areas where you take electricity and you don't expect the return. But there are areas which survive on their own. I'll give you an example. When we were unbundling, we analyzed this country. At that time, only Entebbe, Masaka, Kampala, Jinja, Tororo, and Mbale were making returns which could make them survive if they were left alone. All the other places were not, they didn't have returns. They were not self-sustaining if they were left alone. So we are using these 5 or 6 districts. We call them districts in the UAB terms. 5 or 6 districts, we are using those two to maintain electricity supply in the whole area. It's the same thing today. This thing is a utility. So it is government, we should take deliberate effort to extend utility to the rural people. There are some East African countries, like Kenya, I think they're now 60% electrified. But Uganda has come a long way. I think now, if I'm not mistaken, we should be like 35 to 40 electrification in the whole population. It is like this everywhere. Egypt is 100% electrified. And then also that Egypt, there are areas of Egypt where they're just giving electricity. Like yesterday, you heard they were saying, lifeline. That is for the lowest consumer, the grandmother in a single room. That one, they give her a different tariff because it is a utility and we must supply our people with electricity. Yeah.
Now, looking at UEDCL coming to play now, what do you think it can learn from either the mistakes that have led to Umeme, of course, not renewing their concession, or what can they take away? They say, let's build on this as they move into action. Exactly.
Now, I said earlier that they're starting from somewhere. They're starting from a better place than when Umeme started. What they should learn is the efficiency. Efficiency, not being wasteful, good enough now, there's prepayment. So the issue of uncollected bills will now be over. They should document their customers. They should know them. They should cut down theft of electricity. Then the lines, this electricity has got assets spread all over the country. Sometimes there is vandalism. Other times there is trees growing into the lines. So they should do line maintenance and efficiency.
As they continue with this program, I'm talking about the one of winding up transfer. Yesterday was official, but I know they still have a month to. 6 months or two, winding down. But again, we know that there are still some matters of contestation between government and Umeme, this limited company. What would you tell government? What would you tell Umeme? Because I know part of the reasons concern financial issues. They are disgruntled with the amount of money their government, the Director General, says they have to be paid. And this is a matter that, of course, like you who are former staff, Umeme staff, when you have matters of financial matters, they also trickle down to the former staff, like those who are with Umeme now.
Well, I think they will resolve it. They should resolve it. But Umeme should also not be too hard, because, as I said, they're at a very high rate of return. So by now they must have gone smiling, really, because the CEO yesterday was saying he got $108 million last week into his account, paid to him by government. They should really go smiling, because they have been charging a very high rate of return. Yeah, but they will resolve it.
Government is also trying to extend or even increase the power generation. I know there are programs even funded by the World Bank to increase extension of electricity, but also power generation. We know you have Kaluma, Isimba. But for the people where you come from, Nebi, people of West Nile, even up today, I know there was a launch of extending power, but even up today, when you go to Yumbe, when you go to Zombo, when you go to Nebi, Paida, and the rest of the areas there, even up to now, even when they had their own in the name of Simon D'Ujanga, up to today, they are still living, they are still hearing that there is power is gone or power is on. They don't know, much of them, many of them don't know, but there is power in their own country, their motherland.
Well, we did a lot of work there. In that area you have mentioned, we had a special program for rural electrification. It was worse than that. But we improved it. We have now reached every sub-county with electricity. That means, of course, along the way we supplied people. But also, the people are not they're not getting connected, because the connection cost was prohibitive. But I'm glad the government also made a free connection in those areas. Also, we have also improved equally. Now the main grid, we extended it last year to that region, as you know. We still have some work to do.
Yes, I know the grid was extended, but I'm talking about real connectivity to the industries that are booming from Alua to
industries, and they have no problem. Industries, when they come...
Even to the homes.
Yeah, the problem is with the homes. The homes, first of all, they may not afford the connection. And that one, government mitigated by putting free connection, but it was not enough to serve only very few people. I don't know if they're working on more free connection programs. Such are the things I was talking about. Sometimes government has to do things free of charge because this is a utility. So West Nile is coming up. West Nile is coming up. Whichever industry is there is being supplied promptly. But the rural people don't have money to connect to the power, and the government intervention is necessary. We already had 1 or 2 free connection programs. I think we will need more to get more people, because now the power is reliable, it's coming from the main grid. Yeah.
Thank you, Honorable Simon Giw D'Ujanga. Your final words to the energy consumers, but also those people in the power sector, because we know power, just like UEDCL is coming in with a new tagline, that lighting up our country.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, from someone who has been there as an electrical engineer, as someone who has been part of the UEB as a staff, but also as a Minister of Energy. You know much about our sector. What will make this subsector thrive, and what do we need to do to make sure that, yes, Uganda is there, up there on the, when you talk about being on the national grid, but especially steady supply, but also getting returns out of this sector?
Well, the worst is over. It's all I can tell all Ugandans. The worst is over. We now have enough capacity to generate. I think transmission is also not so bad. The problem is distribution, to take this power to where it is required. That's all now we need to focus on. But the worst is over. To the new CEO of Uganda Electricity Distribution Company Limited, it should be focused. It should be focused. There are going to be, now it is a government company, you know,
Yes.
So there are going to be many people coming to ask you for this, trying to divert him. It's a government company, politicians are going to come, the elections are coming, we want power in my village, you know, but it should be focused. And the minister spoke very well yesterday. I think the minister should also help this gentleman, the new CEO, should help this gentleman to shield him from these political influences. And we should be fine.
When you talk about the political influences, I know Parliament is also key in this, especially I think a National Economic Committee, COSASE, but also the Infrastructure Committee. What should be the role of Parliament, members of Parliament, in making sure that, yes, this subsector grows and improves our livelihoods?
Yes, good. Those two committees, there are two committees there which are key in this sector. Natural Resources Committee. I hear these days they call it also Environment and Natural Resources Committee. And then the economy, international economy. Those two are key, because the national economy will look at how to supply enough money into the sector. A Natural Resources Committee is just the oversight, that what government said that we are doing, are they doing it? But with the shielding I was talking about is not this one. The shielding is individual MPs going, or individual somebody standing for a certain position, going in and trying to influence the gentleman there to spend or do something outside their plan. That's why I say it should be focused. And the minister should shield him from that kind of unnecessary pressure on him. But if that's done, he should manage, all right. He got all the Umeme people. Most of the people he's going to use to work with are the Ugandans who are already working with the Umeme. And believe you me, I work with those engineers, I work with those technical people. They're good. They are good. They just need supervision along a certain policy line, and they should deliver. They should deliver.
Yes, they could be able to deliver, but as I was telling you at the beginning, that yes, the promise could be, you could give rosy promises, but you dealing with the issue of eradication of poverty, because when you talk about, yes, you want to supply, you want to extend the power, but the issue of people being able to pay back. Why shouldn't government at least inject more or try to do much more than what is being done now? I know they would give an excuse of different programs, but real empowerment on the ground seems that is mainly into maybe agriculture, this, that, but issues of economic empowerment of the people to be able to earn and pay back some of these services, which are not free, because no one is giving you power for free, even when they say they are extending power, but you still have to pay for connection and also after getting the power.
You know, I've been there for many years, but we are getting a lot of good support from government. Actually, I think our sector was number 2 after maybe roads and health. Number 2 or 3. So government can only do so much. There are other, as you have mentioned, there are other things government must do. The resource envelope is limited. So we were focusing on on generation, on transmission, and a little bit of distribution. We also had some loans from China for distribution. This must continue. And now I heard they were floating another power station, but the requirement for a power station now is not like it was then. So some funds should be shifted to distribution if we want to improve our percentage coverage. And yesterday they announced a reduction in the tariff. I think they will now apportion quite a bit of money in distribution. If I was the minister, my focus would now be on the distribution to the population. Distribution to the population within the next 5 years, and it would improve.
When you say if you were a minister and the minister could be watching you, what did you do during your time as the Minister of State for Energy that maybe Oporoto Kasai, who is now in your position, or even his senior, Dr. Canon Ruth Nankabilwa, could learn from you, that you think that this, listening to a wise man, wise elder, statesman, you think they could take from you that could also help them, being younger than you, but also being more experienced in that sector, being an electrical engineer, that they could learn from you that could also propel this energy sector to greater heights?
I think they've done very well. In the last 4 years, those two have done very, very well indeed. Very well. And they should just continue, because as you heard yesterday from their staff, or the PS was saying, that even if you call the minister at 1, she will pick her phone and listen to you. Much as they are not, this is not their area of expertise. If they can listen to the technocrats and guide them, they should not have any problem.
Honorable Simon D'Ujanga, this should be my last question. Sitting here and watching what is happening in West Nile, watching what is happening in cabinet, and watching what is happening around, do you miss the life that you were living in as a cabinet minister? But also thinking of now that many people are positioning themselves for 2026, are you likely to say people of Okoro in maybe, here I am, I'm coming back?
We have not made that decision yet. You will be told in due time. Okay. Yeah.
Do you miss anything being...
Well, of course, I've been there. I was a minister since 2006. So my life was mainly that side. From engineering, came to politics, and then I was minister. So my life was so much on that side. Now, when you're out here, then you must change. You must change the way you live, and that's what we are doing.
It's been a pleasure speaking to you, taking some words of wisdom from you, a senior gentleman, Honorable Simon D'Ujanga, who's an electrical engineer, and he was part of the UEB staff then, before we saw the entry of Umeme, that is 20 years ago. And now we have been talking about the incoming of UEDCL, Uganda Electricity Distribution Company Limited, that is going to be making sure that you stay connected. And if you are able to watch us live now, wherever you are using power, just know that effective today, we know that Uganda Electricity Distribution Company is in charge. We've been used to Umeme. Whichever complaints you have with your power connection, then you have to be forwarded to UEDCL. Thank you so much, Honorable Simon D'Ujanga. I should say also that I've liked the environment here. It's so green and forested. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. We now take you back to studio for Kwesi Genyi, who is in the studios, and we will... I've been Stephen Mbidde on FFS with Brian Kayondo here and Moses Egesa.